Ivan Koloff, the Russian Bear, was one of wrestling's most hated villains and a true pioneer of professional wrestling. Ivan is respected worldwide for his contributions to the wrestling business, but outside of the ring, he was a gentleman who loved the Lord. Ivan is a former WWF World Champion, the man who ended Bruno Sammartino's reign. Many remember him as Uncle Ivan to his nephew Nikita. We are saddened by the loss of Ivan Koloff, and we honor him with this tribute. We hope you get to know more about this wrestling legend, not just as a performer, but the man Ivan really was, with stories from those who knew Ivan best, and from the man himself. This is the Russian Bear honoring the life of Ivan Koloff.
He started out as a one-eyed Irish rogue called Red McNulty. Now, if you can visualize this, Ivan Koloff at the time had curly red hair, wasn't nearly as heavy as he was in his prime, and he went as Red McNulty and had some success, but Ivan once told me that that Irish character died on the snowbanks of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, working for Stu Hart. It was in Canada, working for the Rougeau brothers, that they decided to change his gimmick, give him the name Ivan Koloff, shave his head, put on about 50 pounds, and all of a sudden he became this massive Russian heel called Ivan Koloff.
But we were sentenced to the maximum security penitentiary, so you don't want to go there if you've never been, or if you've been. About 2,500 inmates, Guelph, Ontario, and gangs in there, of course. And the issue with rolling tobacco back in those days, every week type thing, or every couple times a week, and you'd roll your own cigarettes. I didn't smoke, so I'd give them to my brother, but they'd little gangs would come up to you and try to get, if you're issued a nice shirt or a nice pair of shoes, your tobacco, they'd come up and intimidate you and try to take it away from you. And of course, we'd resist on that because we weren't going to be taking advantages like that. We never were before, so we weren't going to that. And it was bound to get into a fight at one time. One day I witnessed my brother, and he was, a bunch of guys was around him, and said, uh-oh, they're trying to get something off him. So I started hollering real loud, Ray, Ray, you know, yelling and coming towards him. Then just like I was just trying to get his attention, like, you know, but nobody's yelling around there because there's guards all over. So I knew the guards would be looking to see what's going on. And I just walked over to my brother and put my arm around him, you know, and said, hey, Ray, what are you doing, you know? But I knew that these guys were going to hit, you know, try to get him. And the leader of the little gang came up to me after, and he said, you ever try that again, it'll be the last thing you try. I said, that's my brother. If you're going to hurt him, you're going to have to hurt me too. So I guess he respected that, and he it never bothers us anymore. His gang never bothers us. But that's just an example of the stuff that goes on there.
One of my favorite stories is when they put Ivan with Barbarian and Vladimir Petrov. I don't know if a lot of the fans remember him, but he was a Russian that they brought in to kind of replace Nikita, big old guy. And they were doing six-mans. And we were in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and it was me, Tommy Angel, and Gary Roll in the ring. And they were doing a thing where they were getting them ready for the Road Warriors. So the Russians were hitting the ring like the Road Warriors used to. And here it is, me, Gary, and then we're standing here. And without even talking to each other, we knew in each other's minds who we were going to run to. And, of course, that was Ivan, because he was the greatest professional in the world. So what's so funny, you can even see it on TV now, is when those three hit the ring to us, all three of us guys went running to Ivan. And Ivan almost startled, but we knew he was going to be the easiest one to take care of us. So it was almost like all three of us went running to him.
The night in the garden when he became the champion, that was I really believe to this day that was a first in the history of wrestling, because people were so stunned that night that there was fear of a riot, but it was the opposite. You could have heard a pin drop. We had 22,000 people in Madison Square Garden. You could have heard people were so shocked they were paralyzed. They couldn't believe it, you know, because I had been champion at that time for 8 years. And I fought Don Leo Jonathan, you know, giants like Kowalski, I mean, Giant Baba. I fought them all. And even though Ivan had always been a tremendous opponent of mine in the eyes of other people, but because, I'd wrestled him previously, I think that maybe they didn't expect that would happen. And so when he won, the place just went into total shock. And I'm telling you, 22,000 people, you could have heard a pin drop.
Whenever I went up to the top and came off one, and I covered him like it was just like 1, 2, and you expect a kickoff, but it's 3. And you get up, and I raised my own hand like that. Then what's the referee? He says, raise my hand, like, where's the belt? Like that. And he said, no. I mean, everybody went so quiet in there. They didn't believe it. They thought probably they're going to say, no, continue the match. You can't do that or something, But it didn't happen that way. It ended up, it held, and so the people couldn't believe it. And they're real quiet. You could hear a pin drop.
I thought that I was hurt because when Ivan came off of that top rope, he landed heavy on me, okay? And when I heard that quietness, I thought that maybe because of the way he came down on me, I thought that it affected my hearing because I felt I couldn't hear anything. But then the fellow named Arnold Skoland, he came over to me and he said, "Are you all right?" And I heard him perfectly clear. And I thought, what the heck is going on? I heard him so clear, And then slowly I got up. And I looked like I was puzzled. I didn't understand, because every time I was in that ring and my opponent would do some, people would always boom, all that kind of stuff. And that happened during the match with me and Ivan. But this is the finale. That I really thought something had happened to me, till I heard Arnold Skoland.
Still to this day, people talk about the WWE and the night that Bruno lost the title. And to the credit of the Russian Bear, he is ranked among the greats because he did something that none of the other great opponents could do to the man, to the Italian Superman, to Bruno Sammartino. He beat him. He got the 3 count. He won the belt.
I remember one match, for example, I ended up wrestling, and there was a guy by the name of Lord Lathan, from Australia or something. He was a wrestler, but he was a commentator, about 7 foot tall, real tall guy, and from Australia, had that accent. And I remember after the match, I had on TV with the old timer John Fody. He was supposed to be a real tough guy, that John Fody too. But I guess he took a liking to me because he seen I had potential, I suppose. And he did beat me on TV one day, and I was surprised. What's going on? The bell rang all of a sudden. It was a 15-minute time limit on TV. And he ended up, Lord Layton came over and was going to talk to me and do an interview. I didn't know anything about it. And so I didn't know how to talk, and I was shy and everything like that. And he says, "Well, how do you think you made up for your debut here on television today?" And I says, "Well, I think I did all right. I think I could have did better, but of course my opponent, he's got more connection with me, with the promoters, and he's more known." What I was trying to say was more experienced, but it came out like who he knows. It's not what like this. But I got through it all right, and back to the dressing room, and got a lot of encouragement from the guys and the promoter and all that.
One time we were going to Sumter, South Carolina. I was driving my Cadillac, and it's a back way that you can go to Sumter, South Carolina, down through the country, through Waxhaw and down through there. Anyway, I was driving, and we get behind this log truck on a 2-lane road, and it's back when we had fuzzbusters. Just behind him, couldn't do nothing. So finally, I said, "I'm gonna pass it." It was on a no passing lane, just behind him for miles, trying to get to the match. So I punched the car and got about halfway around him, and all of a sudden my fuzzbuster go off, and there's a South Carolina Highway Patrol in a meeting. So I jerked back in, and I could see the guy turned around, and I looked at Ivan. I said, "Ivan, what should I do?" And Ivan said, "Outrun him." He said, "Try to outrun him." I said, Ivan, I can't outrun him. So I was nervous as hell. So I pull over this little old dirt pig path road, and here he comes. I get out and I'm leaning up against the trunk. He comes walking up, big old highway patrolman, and he looks at me. He says, Don Kernodle. I said, what in the world are you doing? I said, sir, I know you saw me and I passed on that old yellow line back there. I said, that logging truck is making me so mad. I'm trying to get to the match. I said, I was wrong. And he looked and he saw Ivan's bald head in the front seat of the car. And he says, is that Ivan Koloff? I said, yeah. He said, can I talk to him? I said, yeah. I said, hey, Ivan, come back here. So Ivan comes back out, and the highway patrolman talks to us about 15 or 20 minutes. And he got me to open the trunk so he could see the belts and everything, blah, 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 blah. And obviously didn't get a ticket, had a good time. He met Ivan and me, and it was really great.
Yeah, you know, a funny story. In fact, I have it in my autobiography. It's called "Whoo, Missy Daddy, Welcome to My World," the Jimmy Valiant story. Yeah, Ivan, man, you know, we used to have to make, no matter where we were in the country, you know, every Saturday morning we had to be in Atlanta, TBS, and before the Crockett's bought a couple planes, and you know he bought the big jet, for, you know, and a couple other planes, or they would charter planes. We'd fly commercial. So this happened to be Friday night. We wrestled at the Richmond Coliseum in Richmond, Virginia, and Ivan. The next morning we had to be. We went on live, you know, in Atlanta, WTBS, you know, Channel 17, the Superstation, would go on live every Saturday at 10 o'clock, 10:30-ish. But it'd be live for the Atlanta viewing for studio. It was the studio. But this would show all over the world at 6:05 that night. But the reason we had to do it at 10 o'clock in the morning to 10:30 was that we were somewhere that night wrestling. We'd be in Cincinnati, you know, or we'd be in Ashland, or we'd be, you know, Savannah or Florida or wherever, you know. We'd be somewhere, Charlotte, we'd be somewhere that night. So we had to do that. So this early morning, you know, we had to take the first flight out from Richmond to Atlanta, and the first flight's like 7 in the morning. So time we got from the Coliseum, you know, to the motel, we stayed at the Holiday Inn there by the airport, you know, in Richmond, and time the boys all unwind, you know, and whatever. And I'm not saying that Ivan had a few beers or something the night before, but you know, whatever the reason, even if he didn't, you know, time you got down, and if you ate a bite or unwind and got in bed and try to, you know, come down and relax, you know, man, it's like 3, 4 in the morning. Well, you got to catch a 7 o'clock flight, and you got to get up and you got to shower, and you know how much sleep you're going to get, you know. So if you get any at all, many times, man, we stayed up all night, you know, and I don't know if this was one of the nights Ivan stayed up, but that morning we were. I came in and I seen Ivan, you know, away from the other. You know, patrons at the airport. And at that morning, you know, Saturday morning, it's not really jamming anyway, but he's off to his side, and he's sitting there, you know, and he's sort of trying to get some shut-eye, you know. He's sort of like this, and I said, oh, man. And I said, I'm going to have a little fun. So I seen a little courtesy phone, and I go over and I pick it up, and I says, hey, yes, would you page a person for me? His name is Red McNulty, and please, I need to see him at gate so-and-so, you know, you know, we need to hook up, you know. So I hung up. She said, you know, that's their job. So I hear in a couple of minutes, yes, paging Red McNulty, would you please go to gate so-and-so and to meet your party? And so, and I'm like standing behind this big pillar, you know, where he can't see nothing. And when he hears Red McNulty, he goes like this. He goes, and then he goes back to his position, So that was, what I wanted, but I wanted maybe a little more. So I waited about 10 minutes, and I went over and paged again, and because we were about ready to get on the board, and I said, would you please page Red McNulty one more time, and at gate so-and-so. So here comes the page this time, and it says, hey, would Red McNulty please meet your party at gate so-and-so, and here, this time Ivan, he's like this, and he's in the position, and he didn't put nothing over. As soon as he heard Red McNulty, he says, Red McNulty died. And I'm behind the pillar, and that was really the what I was trying to get out of him. That was what I was looking for. The reaction. From, and I busted out, man. And then he looks at me, and oh man, I said, we gotta go to work, boss.
I always take it back to personal relationships that I've had with the guys, and that's how much Ivan means something to me. One of the first airplane trips I ever took for Jim Crockett Promotions was they flew me into Cincinnati, and I was a young kid, never been out of Charlotte, and this is when it was Ivan, Nikita, and Khrushchev. And I landed in Cincinnati with just my bags in my hand, didn't know where to go, had no clue about getting a taxi or anything, and the boys just all split up, and I'm standing here at that Cincinnati airport. Had no idea where I was going, and believe it or not, Ivan Koloff and Khrushchev, and to this day I remind them of that. They pulled up after they got their rental car and saw me standing there like something out of a movie with my bags, and they picked me up and took me with them that whole loop, and that was 30-something years ago. So I always like to remind Ivan and of course Khrushchev that they didn't have to do that, and that just shows you the type of guy that Ivan Koloff is.
One of the greatest matches I ever saw in my life, IWA. The champion, Pedro Martinez, ran that, along with Eddie Einhorn from the Chicago White Sox. They had come in as opposition to Vince McMahon, and they ran a show in Roosevelt Stadium in New Jersey. And one of my all-time favorites as a fan, Mil Mascaras, was in the main event in a 2 out of 3 fall match against Ivan Koloff. And I have to tell you, when you talk about classic wrestling, this wasn't a kicking and punching exhibition. Here you had two guys who really knew how to wrestle, 2 out of 3 falls. And I'll never forget the one sight that I remember so well about this match is during the 3rd fall, it started pouring rain out. And the fans were all going toward the exits because it was an outdoor stadium. And I was getting ready to pack up my camera equipment, and the match was still going on. And as I was about 40 feet away from the ring, I turned around. My camera was still in my hand, and I saw Mil Mascaras do this so graceful dive off the rope with the rain all over he and Ivan Koloff to pin Ivan, which ended the match. But it was a match of magnificence. It really was. And Ivan Koloff was, he was just such a great competitor in that company. But then again, he was a great competitor everywhere.
One thing about Ivan, and Ivan is the greatest guy in the world until he touches liquor. If Ivan touches liquor, it's Lon Chaney turning into the Wolfman, or Dr. Jekyll turning into Mr. Hyde. I mean, he turns into a monster. There are other people like that. Ivan can't drink liquor, and he knows it. He pretty much stays away from it. He was going to whip my ass one night in Houston.
Wow.
It's funny. We had a show there that night at the Sam Houston Coliseum. I know I'm getting. We'll get back to the sheet, but anyway, I was rooming with Ivan that night, And Ivan had gone out with Dickie Murdoch. I had gone out, I think, with Manny Fernandez, who's a volatile personality himself. But anyway, they came back later on. I was in the lobby, and Dickie came in, and he said, "Damn that Ivan." I said, "Man, we almost got into a fight." I said, "Who with?" He said, "Each other." I said, but they didn't, I guess, actually get it. But Ivan had been drinking the liquor, and he was in the room, and boy, he was in a miserable mood, and he was acting like he was going to whip my ass, and I was scared to death of him. I was afraid of Ivan that night, or any night. Ivan's a powerful guy.
I ended up having to fight my way to the ring just about every night, and fight your way back too. The police were good, but a lot of times they'd get a sucker shot in on you. Or the women was just as bad as the men. They'd carry stuff in their purse and hit you with their purse. It was a brick or whatever. But I even had in Three Rivers, Quebec, after I was there a few months, they shot nails at me on rubber bands. And I didn't know what it was at first, but it hit me in the back, all over, and it hurt. And one of them got stuck in my head. Got to the dressing room, I said, "Man, what's in my head? I can feel something." And the boys were looking at it, laughing. They said, "Man, you got a nail stuck in your head." And that's what they're doing. They're shooting, bend the nails, and they'd shoot it at me and stick it in. That's dangerous. I mean, they could have missed me and hit a kid with, blinded him or something, you know, but they didn't think of that, I guess. But they're crazy because back then beer was allowed in the arenas, and people would get a little tipsy from drinking, and it was, I guess, the type of thing you'd have to take care of the ones that got a little too much to drink, because they'd try to attack you, whether it was coming back from the ring or going to the ring, or after the match. I've had quite a few incidents after the match of the store. You'd stop to get a beer, six-pack or something, depending on how long your trip was, and you'd end up, man, I had situations from, I can remember one was really bad, and I had an axe handle in the back of my car, and I carried it just for that reason. But later on, I carried more heavier artillery than that. I carried a machete for a while, and 357 for a little while. So, but back then it was just axe handle, and I had to use it down in, this was after Montreal, down in Florida. Yeah, the guys, about 6 of them came up to me at the store after, and I was coming out with my beer, and they were going to see how tough I was. I said, "Just a minute, guys, let me put this down." Talked real nice to them, put it down, grabbed the axe handle, and started swinging. They took off running. I hit a couple of them in the back, you know. But
probably my favorite Ivan Koloff story was, it happened right here in Charlotte, is Ivan was getting ready to do some Russian chain matches with Ric Flair. And we did this right on TV. It's one of my greatest moments. So Ivan, to demonstrate the chain match, was going to come out on TV with big Vladimir Petrov, and they needed somebody. They needed a volunteer. So Ivan gets out and says, "Okay, we'll offer $100 to anybody that will just stand here and let us demonstrate the chain." So the storyline was, here comes me, all-American young guy, greedy, as Ivan called it, you know, and would do anything for money. So I come right out on television. We had David Crockett and Bob Caudle, and so they demonstrate the chain, and Ivan's demonstrating the chain and how it's strapped and how dangerous it is. And of course, I turn my back, and of course Ivan Koloff and Vladimir just Pearl Harbor me. I mean, they're kicking me, stomping me, and what got Ivan so mad, it got the people so mad at Ivan, is when it was all done, I'm out, Ivan reaches down and takes the $100 bill, a real $100 bill, out of my trunks, because I stuck it in my trunks, you know. So he even not only beat me up, how bad is that, but he took the $100 back. So it set him up for Dusty. But here's what I'm getting at, guys. What meant more to me than anything, because I just, you know, got into working for Crockett a little bit. We came back in the dressing room. It was at Pfeiffer College right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. When it was all said and done, TV was over, Ivan Koloff walked over to me, and he handed me that $100 bill. And I was afraid to take it. I said, "What do you know, it's just part of the story." He said, "No, you deserve it." So a lot of people don't know that. I had wrote about that in my book, but Ivan came back and made sure that he gave me that $100 bill. So that, to me, describes the type of guy that Ivan. A lot of the boys would have just, okay, you did the storyline, you got a little bit of TV coverage, you got paid for that appearance, that was enough. But that just shows you what type of guy and how special Ivan Koloff is.
Yeah, Ivan Koloff, I had a great feud with him in maybe 81, went into 82, and he was the best shape of his life. He was in his prime, and I was too. Again, going back, we were the same age. We were born the same year, and Ivan was the Mid-Atlantic TV champion. And to beat the TV champion, you had to beat the TV champion, within a 20-minute time limit. If it went 20 minutes, the bell would ring no matter what, and the belt would return to the champion, TV champion. And Ivan and I wrestled for 9 months for that belt, 9 months for the TV title, and we would most likely go through the limit of we call Broadway. We would go 20-minute time limit every night, 7 days a week. We would wrestle in the Mid-Atlantic for the Crockett Corporation, and man, he had me in my best shape of my life. He was in his best shape because we were going on it, hand over fist, man, for 20 minutes for every night, 7 days a week, and really on Sundays and Saturday and Sundays we'd work twice, so many times I'd wrestle him 10 times a week. And talking about getting in shape, if you go, wide open, man, 120 miles an hour, you got to have that gas tank full, brother, because Ivan will drain you fast,
Boogeyman, yeah. But we go back a long ways. We met around the Chicago area, and Boogeyman I always looked at him as being the bad guy, but here he is now doing the street guy, and the people are loving him, really getting over. And I was there on TV, and Ole was the booker in the territory at that time. And Ole come up to me when we're watching the TV one day, just standing there watching the studio wrestling, and he says, Ivan, you think you'd make money with Jimmy there? I said, you kidding? I said, I sure could. And he says, okay, he's yours.
I was very fortunate, to have that big feud and big run with the Crockett's, man, and it drew a lot of money for the company and drew a lot of money for Ivan and myself. And Ivan will tell you, it was so hot that they took us many times out of the Coliseums on Saturday. They would give us spot shows, in these small towns in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and they would sell out, man, these gyms and little community centers and the YMCA, wherever we wrestled would sell out.
He's one of the toughest goddamn guys I ever knew. He did shit that was crazy as hell. But he knew how. And when he got in the ring, you knew he was going to do the best that he could possibly do to draw people next week, or make the people that are there now satisfied that they got a hell of a match. And he was just he had a hell of a match all the time. And he did stuff that was crazy as hell. He and I think we were teammates for a couple times. I was short of somebody or whatever it might be, and we teamed. And he went out to the goddamn post, and he went like that, and he hit his head. And he did it again. I don't remember how many times he did it, but he did it several times. And cut him open. I said, Ivan, are you nuts? People would say, oh, you're using razor blades. There was no razor blade there. He just banged his head against that damn turnbuckle, that big post that the ring is set up on. And he opened himself up. And I said, nobody in their right mind would do that shit.
What was it like working Georgia for Ole Anderson?
It was an experience, for sure. Yeah, I got along all right with Ole. Matter of fact, we're a tag team, the champions for a while, and got along all right. I think we had one run in where Buzz Sawyer and I were the champions, and they'd do 1 week in Ohio, 1 week down in Georgia, and we ended up getting a rental car to go from Cincinnati to Columbus. Then we had to go back to Columbus, drop the car off, catch a flight back, and make TV on Saturday morning. We missed our flight back and ended up, because we had quite a drive after Columbus. You had 4 or 5 hour drive back to Cincinnati, turn the car in, get a couple hours sleep, time to get up and catch 7 o'clock flight back and to do the TV. And we missed the flight. And Ole was upset. And he ended up, called us in the office and he said, man, I got to do something. I got to find you guys. He took Buzz in there first and he ended up finding them. I didn't know what it was at the time. I could hear some hollering, yelling in there. And then came out and Buzz said to me, find me. And he didn't say how much, and so I went in, and I remember I had my big hockey sweater on that I wore in the wintertime. It was a big wool sweater with hockey players on it. And I took it off because it was getting hot in the office, and I took it off and set it down on the chair. As soon as I went in there, Ole started telling me, well, I just fined Buzz for being late. I'm going to have to fine you. I said, no, Ole. I said, you're not fining me. I said, you fine me, you're going to have to fight me for it. Because that's like going in my pocket and stealing money out of my pocket that I'm going to feed my family with. And I'm not putting up with it. I mean, if Ole was to tell the truth, you're asking him today. That's exactly the way it happened. I stood up, and I was telling him, I'm going to have to fight it out. And he looked at me for about 20 seconds, and he seen it was serious, I guess. He says, okay, don't worry about it. He said, I'll take care of it. And I don't know how he took care of it, but whenever I left the territory, he put a bonus of $200 back on my check. So he must have took 25 here, 20 without me knowing it, because he knew I was a bullheaded guy that I'd fight him for it. But I was convinced I was going to do it, too.
Thank you, Ivan, for what you poured into me, your years of sacrifice, and just your willingness to help me learn the art of professional wrestling. And I hope in some small way that I've made you proud by the career that I had, and also more than anything, the opportunity and the ability to come together now, you and I, and whatever life's remaining for the two of us, and our opportunity to impact the kingdom for eternity. And for that, I say, I love you, Ivan, and I just say thank you for everything you've done for me.
Love the knee pads that Ivan Koloff used to wear. They were actually attached to his boots. And I know the fans are going to thinking, okay, George, you got way too much time on your hands. But it wasn't just a knee pad. It was, his boot was connected. And I thought that was the coolest looking bad guy look. And I used to ask Ivan about it. And he told me, believe it or not, that that's what messed his knees up so bad. And he said that they were attached to his boot and there wasn't much give. So that's probably more than the fans want to know about Ivan, but I used to be so interested in even the shovel. He just had that bad guy look. I'll tell you something that Ivan used to do, and you can't do it now, I guess, but back in the day at the old Jim Crockett show, especially here in Charlotte, they used to sing the national anthem, and I'm sure they still do that before a lot of events, but Ivan used to come out during the national anthem. And even sometimes when he'd be in like second or third match and they would begin the national anthem, Ivan would always turn and leave. And back then it was just that USA against Russia, and where Ivan wouldn't have to say a word, he would just leave the ring during the national anthem. And you talking about getting so much heat with the people, not even saying a word. He didn't jump the guy, he didn't tear the American flag, he just turned around and left. And just an amazing, amazing thing. And I miss that part of it about Ivan.
he was like the toughest guy in the world. And in real life, he is one of the toughest guys. I can remember a quick story. We were in, God, I think it was in Richmond, Virginia, and we were rooming together, and we got in the room, it must have been about 1 or 2 in the morning, and the next morning we had to drive to another town, to Charleston, South Carolina, or wherever it was. So we got about 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and I can remember Ivan getting up. He went over to the mirror, and he didn't know I was awake, and he was trying to lift his arm up. And I remember him grabbing his hand and, you know, trying to lift his arm up. He couldn't even hardly move his arm from the night before. And I'm looking at him, I feel so sorry for him, because when he was in the ring working, he worked harder than anybody. So we get in the car and we start driving. You know, I ask him, Ivan, how you doing? He goes, oh, I'm feeling great. You know, we go to the gym, train and everything. The next night, you know, that night, wrestling, here's Ivan taking bumps, flying around. You don't even know he was hurt. And I just think of what he was going through that morning, couldn't even pick up his arm. And he's in the ring slamming people. And this was every night Ivan was like this. And that's what I'm saying. With Ivan, there was every night when that bell rang, he was 110%. And it wasn't for Ivan Koloff, it was for the fans and the other wrestlers that he wrestled with. He did it because he wanted the match to be the best match it was. And that's the kind of guy he was. He's the Russian Bear, the toughest guy in the world, and he's a great guy.
It was on the 4th of July. It was double shots. We done wrestled one time over in North Carolina, was down in Columbia, South Carolina, and I was driving Ivan's car. Because Ivan liked to drink the beer and everything, and so I'd drive a lot so he could drink. I didn't drink, and we was coming out of South Carolina. And I was speeding. We hadn't even got out of Columbia hardly. I mean, maybe 5 miles from the building, 5 miles from the building. Damn fuzz supposed to go off, and I'm speeding. We see the highway patrolman come through the meeting. He comes and pulls me over. I pull over and waiting on him. He gets up behind me, and I look. It's this huge black highway patrol, South Carolina. You know, you hear all these stories. It's black, South Carolina, blah, 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 blah. And Nikita's involved in this. He's in the back seat. It's just when Nikita just first came in, he was that badass, and he'd always say something crazy to people. He lived his gimmick 24 hours a day, brother. He's mean to people, blah, blah, blah. And I looked in the rearview mirror and I said, Nikita, don't say a word. Don't say nothing to this guy. So I get out of the car, walk around out to the back. True story, Ivan, Nikita, tell you. I went down on my knees and I says, Officer, how can you give the Pride of the USA a ticket on this great birthday of the nation? He said, I'm not. So I stood back up, and he was glad to meet us too. He got all of us out of the car talking to us. He called 3 other highway patrol cars up there behind us, and they all met us, and we had a hell of a time. Showed them the belts and everything. But I went down on my knees. I said, I got to think of something good, and I got to think of something quick. So I went down on my knees. I swear, I asked Ivan Nikita. I said, Officer, how can you give the Pride of the USA a ticket on this great birthday of our nation? And I'm looking like, he says, I'm not. So I stood back up. He was about 6'5", about 280, big black highway patrol.
So Ivan Koloff endorses his nephew, Nikita Koloff, and starts putting Nikita over as Ivan was kind of winding down a little bit in the ring. Not fully, but a little bit. And Barry Darsow is Crusher Khrushchev. So they're in Jim Crockett Promotions. They're also being seen on the Superstation on TBS, where Jim Crockett's show was aired for so many years, the National Wrestling Alliance show. And they were appearing in Baltimore one day. And I called Ivan, and I said, I've got a great idea. And I told him I had already spoken to Jim Crockett about this. Jim Crockett said, do it. One sunny day, when they were appearing in Baltimore, I took Ivan, Nikita, and Crusher Khrushchev to Washington, D.C. And we posed them, I posed them in front of the Washington Monument, in front of the White House, and people walking on the streets were yelling out commies to them. Some of the security guards by the White House, who weren't allowed back then, and even today, of course, to let people within a certain amount of feet of the White House, they were huge wrestling fans. So we got shots right by the gate, the outside gate of the White House. But we ran stories running those pictures, and the hate mail that we got was absolutely incredible. One of the largest responses to anything we ever printed.
Yeah, I could use it against with Bruno and just about every opponent I had after that. And to this day, still carry chain match, comrade. This is Russian chain match. Of course, about 12 feet long. Put around my wrist. Usually put it in the left hand if you're right-handed, and that way you can still punch with the right hand. Same with your opponent, but you have your choice which arm you want it on. And the idea was to get him beat down so much you could drag him around, touch all four corners in the ring while you pulled him. And it was quite a feat, to say the least, to be able to pull some of these guys, you know, because I've had matches with guys that, you know, weigh 350, 400 pounds. Just about impossible to pull them.
Yeah, I was never with the guy. That's why I say throughout my career, when you say about a good story, what's the only stories I can tell you is only our matches, because outside the ring, I never saw Ivan. I never hung out with him. I never been anywhere with him. But ever since both of us have been more or less retired from the ring, and we ran across each other, maybe an autograph signing place or whatever, and we start talking, you know, on the phone. That's the most conversation I had with Ivan was after we retired, not before. Before I had all the respect in the world because for all the reasons that I told you. But today I respect him not only for what he was, but for what he is, the man that he is today. Because he's a guy that is very sincere in his beliefs. He spreads it around, I think, in a very positive way. His lifestyle, I think, is idealistic as far as, you know, a good human being. I mean, you know, I couldn't find anything negative to say about the guy.
You know, Angel and I are just such dear friends. You know, Ivan and his sweet, you know, wife, Renee, you know, but I call her Sis. I call her Sis. I've been calling her Sis, you know, since the early 80s, you know, over 30 years, you know, and when I see her or when I talk to her on the phone or when we email each other, you know, Angel, you know, we always say hi to Sis, or I hear Sis in the background, you know, when I'm talking to Ivan, and I say, oh, I hear Sis, tell her hi, you know, from Angel and myself, and oh, they're just great Christians, a great fellowship we have with them too, and always, you know, it's just so warm, you know, just to think of the Koloffs as one and a great family they have together. And Angel and I and everybody, we just love them.
They wanted me to go on a tour over to Kuwait and to wrestle over there for, I think it was 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, and then come back and finish up in New York and go back to the Carolinas or whatever. And I was going over with several guys from New York and that. The Iron Sheik was on it, Fuji, Adrian Adonis, Dr. Love, and a bunch of guys like that. Kurt Henning's son was on it. Yeah. No, Kurt Henning was on the trip. That's, I was trying to remember his dad's name. Larry Henning, yeah, from Minnesota. Yeah, he was on that tour too. And I remember going over there. I went to the duty-free shop. They weren't even supposed to give me duty-free stuff to go into the Middle East because you're not allowed to have alcohol over there. I didn't know it. I got a bottle of vodka, but made use of it on the plane over there because they cut me off, serving me drinks. So I went into my bottle of vodka and drank it. And I remember I was drinking with Adrian Adonis at the back of the plane, jumbo jet, and nobody else would drink with me, so I said, Adrian, come on, have a drink. He's not Ivan, leave me alone. I want to go to sleep. I'm tired. So I chug-a-lugged the bottle myself and threw it at him, hit him in the knee. He said, Ivan, man, you hurt my knee. Leave me alone. So I got up and I was pretty drunk. Started walking around the jet, and there was some people from the Middle East playing some kind of game on the table, facing each other. And I remember talking to them. They didn't understand me though, because I was talking English or broken English with my drunken stupor, and sat on their table. And I guess some people were getting a little hot at me, you know. Went around and Mr. Fuji was talking to to the Sheikh, the Sheikh, Khosrow Fazeri. I had been partners with him before, Khosrow, you know, and he was talking to him, and he ended up seeing me come, and he knew I was drinking a bit, Mr. Fuji, and he told Iron Sheik, get away, because you'll be wrestling Ivan in the Middle East. Like the Sheik would be like the good guy, a home guy from the home, and I'd be the mean old Russian coming in to beat him up. And they didn't want the people on the plane to see this, that we're talking together. So I ended up getting over there, and Fuji started talking to me, and I was talking to Fuji, and Sheik stuck his nose in the conversation, and Fuji said, get away from us, like that, the Sheik. And he did that again, and Mr. Fuji told him, get away from us. I didn't know why he was doing it, because I was drinking, you know. But the third time he told the Sheik to get out of there, you know, kayfabe type thing, I turned around and slapped the Sheik so hard I knocked him over the seat. And ended up, he came around and leg dived me, and we fought on the plane. I don't even remember, I was out of it. And when I came to, I was in the seat, and Mr. Fuji had the seatbelt on me so tight, I had about a 30-inch waist at that. Probably the only time in my career I had 30-inch waist. And every time I'd wake up, I'd go to get up, and I wanted to get a hold of the Sheik some more, right? And he just pulled me into. We landed in Jordan before Kuwait, and the militia came on with machine guns and everything. And Fuji had to change from being my bodyguard to my attorney. And he talked him out of it. I just told him that this guy's drunk, you know, crazy Canadian, and said that he'd take care of it, not to worry about it. And they left it. But I went to the bathroom, and I realized, man, bloodshot eyes, and bleeding, and my shirt tore. I said, what the heck? What happened to me, you know? I couldn't figure out what happened, but that's what had happened. I ended up getting in a fight with Iron Sheik, and then when I found that out, it was even madder. And I said, when we landed in Kuwait and went to get our baggage, I ended up going up to the Sheik and I said, okay, well, let's finish this now. I'm not drunk now, I'm sobered up a bit, let's finish it now. In the Iron Sheik, he handled it good, really. Ivan, you should not have hit me. You should not have hit it. Your fault, Ivan. I don't know what to fight you. It was not going on like this. I said to myself, what's he doing this? He's going to sucker me or something. Because I was around the Khosrow before, and he'd end up talking like that, but he'd look for a chance to take you down or something, because he could wrestle pretty good. Anyway, we've been in some fights in the ring where he went to double cross me one time, and he hit me with the chair. I was holding the opponent, and he hit me with the chair, and he knew he was going to be hitting me with the chair, and he laid it in real hard. And I got mad at him, chased him down, took a chair and hit him back over the head real hard, so he knew I wasn't one to take anything off of him, you know.
The first time I saw Ivan was in 1973. I just started my career. I met him in the dressing room, and we sat down and talked, because I was a big fan of his. I used to buy all the wrestling magazines and stuff, and I'd see, you know, he won the championship in the WWF at that time. He was champion for a while, and I was always buying the magazines and everything. It's almost like I knew Ivan already. But Ivan was such a great guy, had a great personality, easy to meet, easy to talk to. Try to talk to him, try to learn some good things about the business, because he knew a lot about the business. And he was willing to help young people in the business and everything. He's just a number one guy, man.
Told me he learned how to kind of take bumps in the barn.
Yeah, we'd go up there and go up in the high beams, like in the haystack, which it was. They'd have like a track running through the top of the barn, which was where the cable and hoist, you might say, that would come down with what we call a pick, and would pick up a big. You just drive it into the load of hay on the wagon, and it would pick up a large amount of hay, and it would run up the track to the top, and the gears would switch and it'd go down the track, and you'd dump it in the loft, and pretty soon your loft got pretty full. And I can remember us going up there and jumping off the beam and doing flips and landing down there in the soft hay. And I really think that helped a lot as far as visualizing wrestling later on. And
well, the one thing that I can say about Ivan Koloff is, and there's just so many guys that are not like that anymore, and a lot of these younger guys are going to miss out on being able to be around Ivan. I can go to a show now where Ivan's doing an autograph session, and you'll see Ivan here with his lovely wife, but a lot of these young kids are over here on the other side of the room. And it's just sad because, I've been doing this stuff almost 40 years, and I can't wait to get to Ivan to just kind of pick his brain and ask him questions. And it's just kind of sad when you walk in and these young kids, you got all of this experience and all this knowledge right here, and nobody's, and Ivan's the nicest guy in the world. He would share any knowledge that he has, but it's just like he's not going to push his knowledge on you. And I know he sees me coming sometimes, and he probably has to like roll his eyes. But Ivan really cared about the boys, the guys. And I know Ivan knew that if he worked hard and drew people, that everybody from the main event down to the first match was going to make money.
It was a good run for me there. I stayed there a couple of years, got to wrestle against Vern, and that was an experience. My ears still ringing. Yeah, some of those guys are real rugged back in those days. They wanted to make it look good, and they did make it look good. It didn't feel too good, but the first time he locked up with me, locked up like this, slapped me right in the ear, busted my eardrum, and I bounced it all off, but he did it to make me upset, so I put up a good fight. I did too. I said, man, if I'm going to get knocked out here, I'm going to throw some swings in. And I started kicking him and punching him as hard as I could, wrestling as hard as I could, but he was a good wrestler. He was like a AAU type of champion, right? And he ended up sending the word over after, tell that guy that's great, do that every time, that's the way I like it. I said, man, what have I got myself into? I got to wrestle like this, and I found out there was a few other guys like that in the business, Eddie Graham, and if you tried to mess with guys like Danny Hodge or something like that, they'd stretch you pretty fast.
Met Ivan Koloff probably in early 1970 in Queens, New York at Sunnyside Garden. I was down there, I was just a rookie. I wasn't smart to the business, and I was going around saying hello to people, and Lou Albano was there, Bill White, Mike Pappas, a lot of guys, and then talking to somebody was this guy everybody was calling Red, and he had bald head. So I said, Red with the bald head, and he looked at me, and he just smiled, and I said, hi, my name is Bill Apter, I just started, I work for Inside Wrestling in the Wrestling Magazine, and in a Russian accent, he says, very nice to meet you. He was Russian immediately, but he told me that any way he could help me at any time, he would be glad to do that. So here was this guy that I had seen on TV and in the sometimes in the wrestling magazines that was a scary guy, and personally he was just like a pussycat.
So I ended up going out there and meeting Stu Hart and the boys. Brett and them were just little kids then, and I ended up really being impressed by those guys. And my suitcase got beat up though, that cardboard suitcase. The trip back, old Stu Hart would take his limousine. A lot of us had piled in a limousine. Had to make trips like from Calgary to Winnipeg, about 500 miles, and but get in there and have a bucket of chicken, and old Stu Hart would get that, and he's a character, Stu Hart, and we ended up he had a big old house and all those kids in it, like a castle, and ended up Stu would get a couple buckets of chicken, and he'd be in the front seat, whether he's driving or sitting in the front seat, and who wants some chicken back there? Yeah, I'll have a leg. Yeah. He'd just take a leg, throw it back to the guy. That limbo was messed up when you get in.
People stick with the times. It's interesting. Ivan was always a heel, and then Ivan did the deal with the Iron Sheik, if you remember. They had a falling out, and they started going around, and people would ask me, "Who's going to be the heel?" I said, I would think it would be Ivan. I mean, we've got problems with Iran, but they're not the problem that the Soviet Union is. It's, you know, it's basically us against them back then. Well, I was dead wrong, because at the time Iran was just getting hot, and people weren't thinking about Russia. Russia didn't have our people holding them hostage like Iran was doing. So most of the shows that we went to, in fact, every one that I could think of, Ivan was the baby face. There really wasn't a baby face. They just went out there and brawled. But the people were behind Ivan more than the Iron Sheik. But it's easy to like Ivan. It's not so easy to like the Iron Sheik.
Yeah, they came to check us out because we're on TV and we're talking about the Soviet Union, Moscow, and how we're going to do to these people over here, whether it's the soldiers get in our face or what, would put them in their place, and that's 6 feet under if we had to. We're saying some really heated stuff on our interview, and we got to the town, and first I thought it was a joke, the promoters or the boys are pulling on us. These two guys in suits, supposedly from FBI or I guess the government office, and they came down, introduced themselves, and they said that we're going to need to check your passports and your visas or whatever if you guys are legally in this country and who you are and all this. So, of course, my accent disappeared real quick, and I had to straighten it out with them. But it was all right, it's just the idea of showing them that I did have my papers together. At that time, I had my Canadian passport and a work visa to be in the States. So, but it could have been a type of thing that the promoter put them up to it, or the boy. I don't know. They didn't act like they're joking, so I played it up like it was a serious thing they're doing, in case it was on the level. But it was scary, a little bit scary when somebody comes in and does that. I had that happen a couple times, matter of fact, and in Japan one time, and then I guess what they're doing is trying to figure out who you really are, because maybe government people are curious.
We kept him alive in the magazines, though, because he was a good seller in the magazines. We could put words into the mouth of Ivan Koloff talking about any American wrestler and use him as a spokesman to say what a bum the guy was, whether Koloff was going to wrestle him or not. There could be a guy on the West Coast that Ivan Koloff didn't even know what to tell us about Wildman Jack Armstrong. American pig, Ivan Koloff would say. You never even knew who the guy was, but he was great for us to keep him alive in the magazines. And we liked him. He always cooperated. He posed whenever we needed poses. He returned phone calls if I needed a real quote from him. He was terrific, and he still is today.
And my second match was against one of my heroes, Mad Dog Vachon. He was supposedly the meanest guy there. In Montreal, the French people loved him because he was a bad guy. He was a competitor in the Olympics, silver medal winner back in the 30s or something, 40s. Anyway, I wrestled him. The first thing I did in the match is Mad Dog came up to me and stomped me, threw me out of the ring, jumped out, picked up one of the wooden chairs, folded it up, put it right over my head, and it broke the bottom of the seat, hung over my head like that, like a necklace around my head. And I was walking around like that. And He said, "Come on, kid." And he yanked the chair off of me. Rough, like a real rough guy. He said, then I knew he wanted me to pick up the chair to go right back to him. And I did, but I had seen him wrestle before. He was a rough and tough guy, so I ended up doing the same thing, and the people loved it. I mean, we fought all over the arena, and that was pretty well made. They used to have me come out of the dressing room while they're announcing my opponent, run all the way out to the ring, run round and round the outside of the ring about 5 times, and then they announce me. I'd jump in the ring, attack my opponent, jump out of the ring after I beat him, run round and round the ring, and run back to the dressing room like the mad Russian, you know.
And you know what I think is so neat, and I wish wrestling fans could understand this. Even now, when it just happened last year, when we're at an autograph signing, like up north or something, and they've got Bruno and Ivan at the same appearance, they won't be seen together. I think that's so neat. Now, they'll go behind the curtain and hug and get caught up and stuff like that, but you won't see them together. Very rare. And I just think that's so neat that they still keep that mystique about them. And the last convention that we were at, I thought it was kind of neat because Ivan wanted a picture for someone, of Bruno. And so Ivan had one of our guys go ask for it. And I thought that was so neat. And you should have saw Bruno's face when we go over and say, you know, I'm not getting this for me, I'm getting it for Ivan Koloff. So it was just so neat that they keep that feud almost alive to this day. And I think it's great for wrestling. I do. I do.